You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Welcome to the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, a program dedicated to uncovering the unified nature of reality and humanity's ever-evolving place as truly galactic beings. For more information on the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome to the Science of Magic, a place where science and magic come together to transform fact into evolving truth. We're coming to you through the X Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. We can also be found on www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. This hour we'll be exploring You Can't Get There From Here. One of the most amazing and mysterious organisms on the planet is the human body. Physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. In spite of our protestations otherwise, we know laughably little about it. One of the functions I find most fascinating is the human facility's response to trauma. At the moment of trauma, the adrenal glands flood the body with adrenaline that induces the option of fight or flight and blocks pain. It can also create inhuman displays of physical strength. The mind becomes crystal clear, seemingly to slow time, so proper action can be taken. The emotions shut down and logic goes on high. All four levels, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, have mechanisms in place that shut down the facility when it goes into overload, isolating the trauma and thus facilitating healing. Any emergency personnel is well versed in this process. What's less known is that trauma tends to become neurologically compartmentalized, and a stimulus-response feedback loop is set in place to prevent a reoccurrence of the unfortunate event. This is the basis behind PTSD. As with all things in nature, there were original provisions set in place to access these compartmentalized places of damage in order to process and heal them once the isolation was no longer necessary. In indigenous cultures, this included shamanic healing, rhythm, dancing, storytelling, and vocalization. We've lost all the above, resulting in a blockage of compartmentalized trauma whereby we live in a feedback loop of our history rather than creating our future. All of our responses, positive or negative, are programs or wiring found in the brain. These programs initiate in two places, the brain and the body. As the data created by experience moves through the pathways from the body to the brain, it causes neurons to fire, releasing chemicals called neurotransmitters. These chemicals produce emotion. Emotion anchors memory. Once formed, this string of chemicals hardwires a feedback loop, stimulus A equals response B, limiting our experience. We can't incorporate anything new unless we change this wiring. The need for this level of healing has not been missed, and many powerful modalities better suited to modern-day society have been developed as a result. Everything from aromatherapy to hypnosis, psychotherapy, NLP, EMDR, and EFT are emerging to compensate for the lack of the original provisions. However, built within the ancient healing modalities were checks and balances passed down for generations, assuring that the compartmentalization was not ripped away prematurely, causing re-injury. The good news about our new modalities is that many of them really work. The bad news is that many of them really work, and without the built-in provisions our indigenous cultures utilized and understood, serious re-injury can result. If there's one thing I've uncovered over my years of practice, the issue is rarely, if ever, what we assume it is. Therefore, I've developed a method known as intention and bottom line to safeguard ourselves against prematurely removing the very compartmentalization that is still necessary for our protection and healing. A brief summary of a very large subject is that through carefully setting our conscious intent, we can take the next steps in our healing according to our bottom line. Our bottom line defines the parameters within which we are willing to experience our intent. There is no substitute for personal responsibility. If we turn our responsibility for our experience to a practitioner, we're setting them up to fail. What is our responsibility? Deciding our intent and bottom line. This sets the parameters for our healing, relieving our practitioners of that responsibility. Our guest this episode is Kathilyn Solomon, EFT practitioner and the author of Tapping into Wellness Using EFT to Clear Emotional and Physical Pain and Illness. I will introduce her after this short break. You are listening to The Science of Magic. This and other innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Kathilyn Solomon, Certified Emotional Freedom Techniques, EFT, tapping practitioner and author. Her latest book is Tapping into Wellness, Using EFT to Clear Emotional and Physical Pain and Illness. She leads tapping groups and teaches, writes, and edits books, blogs, and websites, and teaches and mentors in EFT tapping. She has authored several children's books and is the mother of one 17-year-old son. Kathilyn, thank you so much for joining us on The Science of Magic to share your experience with EFT.
Yes, you're welcome. I'm glad to be here, Gwilda. It's exciting to talk about tapping.
What exactly is EFT?
Emotional freedom techniques. It's a form of you tap on. It's a form of tapping on body calming points while focusing on a targeted problem, just thinking about it or feeling into it. And as you tap on these points, the upset around that particular problem begins to relieve. It draws on. These points are acupuncture points. And it's a quite simple process that anyone can do, from, say, a 2-year-old who's scared of the dark, for example, or a 9-year-old who's having difficulty with reading, or, a young adult who's having test anxiety, on up to, adults who have maybe relationship issues. It can work on pretty much anyone, and you can pretty much try it on anything. So in my clinical practice, for example, I've got, say, people who are dealing with an OCD issue, and what happens with anything from an OCD issue to a food disorder issue or a cravings issue. Maybe they're having difficulty with money, even though they make tons of money, they are not having any money at the end of the month. So it works on any kind of level like that, as well as any physical level. Does that help explain it a bit?
Yeah, it does a bit. Of course, questions beget questions. So what do you mean by a target problem?
Well, okay. So let's just say, for example, I'm nervous talking on the radio. Let's take that as a target problem. So all I would have to do to tap on that would be to just think, I'm nervous about tapping on the radio. How nervous am I on, say, a 0 to 10 scale? Well, I'm about a 7. So then that would be kind of my target problem. I've honed in a specific topic, and right after that I would start to tap on these 9 body calming acupoints. So essentially all you really do is you're tapping on these points while you're focusing in on what the upset is, and the points themselves are activating the body's electromagnetic system. As you're tapping, you're actually tapping into your body's your life force, the chi, however you want to call it. It's the system that kind of moves things through the body. So you're tapping on that. That's activating that. So anywhere that you might have a blockage or you might have a trauma or something you're storing, as you're tapping, it begins to access that targeted area, and the problem or the upset begins to dissolve. I'm not explaining that as best I could today, but essentially as I were to tap on the thing, my body's energy system starts to move and starts to come alive, so to speak. And so as I'm focusing on that one particular problem that's like a little block, it can't stay blocked. It literally moves through my system. Does that help?
So if I've got this right, I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So if I've got this right, the first step is in isolating what you want to work on. The second step is in bringing it to mind. In other words, setting your intent that this is where you're directing your energy. Is that correct?
Yes. You're directing your energy and your mental, emotional state. You're going there.
Okay. So then the third step is going to Eastern medicine, and that's accessing acupuncture points wherein energy may be blocked and activating them through physical tapping. Is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm. It draws on those points that we draw on. They're always the same points. It starts with tapping just on the side of your hand, which like we call the karate chop point. And you're tapping on that, and then we draw on 9 other points that are used in acupuncture, and those points are used because they actually are connected to different organ systems in the body, but they're closest to the surface, and so that's why we choose those points. But
so these, I'm sorry, I can't hear real well, so if I interrupt you, just yell back at me.
Okay.
Were you done there?
I'm done. I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. So do these points directly access the hara or the central part of the body where the points are located?
I'm not sure about that piece. I do know that what they do is they stimulate the whole meridian system. And I'm not really as well studied in Eastern technique, but I do know we draw on those points, and so I suppose they're activating the whole system. So in particular, like that karate chop point, it begins to make the whole system start to flow and move. And another point that we use in tapping is the collarbone point. And that point is literally, I think in traditional Chinese medicine, it's called something like the happy master or the happiness point. And literally just tapping on that point can begin to shift a mood.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Now, again, in Eastern medicine, when you're working with acupressure, which is basically what you're doing here, because you're not working with acupuncture, which involves needles, thank goodness, right? There's 2 different conditions. One's known as kyo, and one's known as jitsu. In other words, one's overly charged, and one has not enough charge. Are you working with that consciously, or is that just kind of taking care of itself by your intent?
That's really taking care of itself by your intent. And it's interesting that, we're talking about tapping on the points, but when we work, but there's occasions, excuse me, probably I'd say maybe 20-30% of the time in my practice and in other practices where I'm tapping on the points while the client's not even tapping. So, in other words, it works even if I'm tapping on my acupoints while the client's not. I think it's a function more of intent. EFT seems to work on you mentioned in your talk in the beginning, the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. And I think, you can look at EFT as working on all those levels, or you might call the spiritual the quantum level. So if I'm tapping on just say a client is going into we've chosen a target, and it's, say, a traumatic event from when they were 7 years old. And maybe it's just a couple-minute event, but they're crying. The emotion that wasn't expressed when they were 7 for whatever reason. Maybe it wasn't okay to cry. Maybe it wasn't okay to be angry. Maybe if they did, they would have gotten in trouble. Maybe it was a survival thing. So sometimes that emotion will come out during the session. Maybe they can't be tapping. I'll be tapping for them. So even though it does draw on those points, they're not it's not set in stone, if that makes sense, that they must be tapping to access their chi. It's like literally we begin to work almost in a partnership, I'd say, whoever I'm working with. So it works in that surrogate manner.
Right. Surrogate's an excellent word for that. I know in shamanic practices, I do a lot of surrogate work and long-distance work. And as long as my intention is clear and I don't have an agenda for the person, I'm running off of their agenda, I can use my personal body to access theirs. Is this what you're talking about?
Yeah, I guess you could call it that. I hadn't really considered it in that way, but yes, absolutely. It's almost like I'm tapping as if I'm them.
Okay.
Yeah. And the agenda is pretty clear. I mean, the agenda is whatever is going on for them. The tapping, this emotional freedom techniques process is a very dynamic process. It's I'm an assistant. I'm not like the healer person. I'm not doing anything to them. And I think that EFT practitioners would say that, others would say that as well. Rather, I'm listening really closely to what's going on with them. I'm watching on a number of levels as well. What's happening with them? What are they saying? What are they showing? What are they expressing in terms of their upset, the detail that they're talking about or whatever. And that's where I'm following. I'm tracking that. So I think probably it's one of the places where I'm totally hyper attentive. I don't have my typical ADHD. I just, I'm focused on them. And so yeah, surrogate. It's a pretty fascinating process. It's pretty amazing to be able to witness somebody walk into your office and say, I'm never going to get over this thing, whatever that thing is. Maybe it's they've been having an obsessive type of affair, or maybe they've got a food craving that is literally out of control, or maybe they're sabotaging themselves at work, or maybe they can't get out of a really awful situation and they've been in it. I think we all know those. I think we've all had some experience with things like this, or maybe they've had pain, chronic pain, or a serious illness for a number of years, and especially with autoimmune illness, which I used to have, where there's sometimes no cure, or so it seems. So they come in pretty hopeless, like I'm a court of last resort, and it's pretty amazing to see some of that trauma begin to lift, or the roots of where it came from begin to clear as we work. So by the end of a session, people are feeling pretty hopeful.
That's great.
About it.
We're going to have to take a short break here, and we will return to our discussion after this break. You're listening to The Science of Magic. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Do you want to hear more Other innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net.
One people, one nation, searching through the night. One people, one nation, searching for the light. One people, one nation, coming from the stars. One people, one nation.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back. This is the Science of Magic, a place where magic and science come together to promote enlightenment. We can be found on www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Kathilyn Solomon, a professional EFT practitioner and the author of Tapping into Wellness Using EFT to Clear Emotional and Physical Pain and Illness. Her website, www.eftminnesota.com. Welcome back, Kathy.
Hi, thanks.
Kathilyn at this point. I'm sorry, I keep leaving the Lynn off your name.
You know, you can call me Kathy. It's fine.
That's just because you can't get a hold of me at this distance, right? I'm sure at this point our listeners would love to have an example of tapping. Would you mind doing an example on the air for us?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I think what we're going to do is we'll start out with 1 point tapping, and then we'll go into, we'll just do a full, I'll show all the points. So right now, we're just going to go to, we're just going to do what I call the Tarzan tap. It's a real easy way to relieve stress. So, Gwilda, I'm going to use you as an example, if that's all right.
Okay.
Could you go ahead and and for all the people listening, go ahead and just find that, right where your collarbone comes together. It's in a man, it would be right where your tie, right where you tie the knot of your tie, and
Gotcha.
feel right into there. There's kind of like a hard bony spot right in the center. Can you feel it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I can.
With your index finger or with two of your index fingers. So now from that bony point, if you've got your finger on the bone, go down an inch with your two fingers. And then go to an inch to the right or to the left.
Okay.
Okay? You find just anywhere around there. Okay.
Got it.
So now if you have two hands free, and this is going to be pretty easy, the process is pretty forgiving. So if you have two hands free, go ahead and tap on both sides of your collarbone, all around that area. I call it the Tarzan tap.
Okay.
So you found the point?
I found the point.
Okay, so now just take a rest for a minute. Go ahead and think of anything. This is more of a general kind of tapping on training wheels, let's just call it. Go ahead and think of anything at all that's mildly distressing. Just some little thing, like the guy cut me off at as I was driving to work today, or something went wrong at the station. I don't know what. Go ahead, pick some minor little thing. Okay, and then you don't have to tell me what it is unless you want to. 0 to 10, just pick an intensity number on the 0 to 10 scale. 10 means it's like, wow, that's just over the top, whatever the feeling is. Down to 0, it doesn't bother me at all. Got a number?
Okay. Got it.
All right. So all we're going to do is you're just going to tap all around on that, what I call the Tarzan point right now. Go ahead and do that. We're just going to do that, and we're going to focus in on that feeling, whatever it is. And we're just going to tap on this point for about 30 seconds. And I'm just going to say these words, this upset, this upset. I don't know what your upset is, but I'm just going to be general. This problem, this upset, this little upset, this problem. I let it go. Okay, so now take a deep breath all the way down. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and we're going to go back to this simple one-point tapping. I'm just going to say some words. Baby smiling, sunrise, golden colors, song, joy, laughter, connection, community. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to tap again, and what I'd like you to do this time, just on that same old collarbone point, go ahead and pick just a picture or an image of something that you love and have that in your mind right now. It could just be as simple as blue sky. We'll just take 30 seconds on this. Okay, since I don't actually have a watch in front of me, let's just say that's 30 seconds. All right, so now Gwilda and everybody else who's listening, go ahead and go back to that original mild upset that you had. And I know you had a number for it. On the 0 to 10 scale now, let me know, did that number go up? Is the upset higher, lower, or the same?
Well, seeing how it started out as 10, it had no place to go but down, so let me see where it's at.
Okay.
It went down to 7.
That's great. So do you see that this is one of the 9 points, just one of these points, and you just dropped 3 essentially energy degrees, so to speak. And if you were to do this kind of back and forth for another 5 minutes, that thing might resolve altogether. Or whatever the core issue is underneath might come up, and you could address that. So it's pretty simple. So now I'll just, do I have time to just go ahead and show the point? I'll show all the points. Is that all right? Do we have time? I'll go ahead.
Let's see. We've got about 2 minutes.
Okay, I'll just run through the points really quickly so anybody that, would like to try this. So basically, let's just say targeting your 7, Gwilda, the 7 of whatever that particular issue is. What I'm going to ask you to do is just go to the side of your hand. You know how you would, if you were going to karate chop a board, that side. Okay, so take the fingers of the other hand and just karate chop into them. Okay, so you're karate chopping. Got it?
Yes, got it.
Now what you're going to say is you're going to say these words. And this is just the template for EFT. It's the basic easy EFT. And you can apply this to anything, any physical ache or pain, any emotional upset, any traumatic event, anything you've witnessed, anything. Okay, so you're just going to say, okay, I've got a 7 on this thing. You're going to just associate with that right now. And we're just going to say this template is, even though I have this problem, and that's where you would fill in whatever your problem is. So you can just go ahead and repeat those words after me. Even though I have this problem, I deeply and completely accept myself. I'm going to say it one more time. Even though I have this problem, I accept everything about this situation. Now, the points are going to be very simple to follow. I'm just showing you just how you do it. Go to the top of the head, and just that point that I told you to pat on in the beginning, just go ahead and tap right there. This problem. You're just associating with the problem. That's the reminder phrase. Then you're going to go to the inside of the eye point, right on the inside of the eyebrow. Okay? It doesn't matter which hand you use. Either hand works. And you're just going to say on the inside of the eyebrow with 2 fingers tapping 5 to 7 times, this problem, and you'll know the specific problem. Outside of the eye, right around the temple with a couple of your fingers, this problem 5 to 7 times. Under the nose, just go right under the nose and tap with a couple of fingers, this problem. Under the chin, like right on the chin point in the middle, this problem. And then go to your collarbone point, which you already know, this problem. And then go under your arm, and under the arm point is right where a woman's bra might cross. It's maybe about 4 fingers down from your armpit. And if you feel around there, you're going to find a sore spot, and that's pretty much right where the lymph is, and that's the point to tap, this problem. And 5 to 7 times, again, you can just pat that with your hand. And then that's literally 1 round. That's how simple it is. And now you go ahead and you take your read on whatever that particular problem is, whatever it was that you were focused in on.
So you go back to the where do I stand now between 1 and 10?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was just kind of a teaching round, but that's essentially what you do. So I don't know. I was teaching at the time, so I don't know if you got a chance to focus on your problem, but if you want to check in? See?
I didn't get a chance. I'm juggling too many things right now, but I will promise to repeat it and let us know where we stand on the other side. And we are going to have to take another break here. We will be back on the flip side of this short break. You're listening to The Science of Magic. Our theme song, One People, One Nation, is from the Winds of Time album by my musical group Starfire. It can be found on iTunes.com, cdbaby.com, Amazon.com, and my website, GwildaWiyaka.com. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, a place where magic and science come together to promote enlightenment. We can be found on www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Kathilyn Solomon, a professional EFT practitioner and author of Tapping into Wellness, using EFT to clear emotional and physical pain and illness. Her website, www.eftminnesota.com. Welcome back, Kathy, and thank you so much for that wonderful demonstration of tapping. I'm sure people will listen again and again and give it a try. So,
I'm
what is
sorry?
tapping most commonly used for, Kathilyn?
Oh, gosh. We'll use it a lot for clearing, like I mentioned, food disorders, clearing cravings. They use it on stress and anxiety. Um, I'm talking about self-applied. Let me just talk a little bit about my practice and who comes. I've done a lot of work with people who are dealing with phobias, everything from, say, an elevator phobia to a social phobia to public speaking phobia, and just seen remarkable results from, say, somebody who, I'm just giving you some examples, somebody who can't even really carry a conversation with more than one person, can't speak up at work. They literally walk by their the auditorium at their work, and they start to get quivers because they see the podium.
My
So
gosh, you
somebody
could
like
heal
that,
me.
I couldn't. I could assist you because you're the director. You're going to direct us to exactly, this is the thing, and I'll get back to other people, exactly what are the origins and the roots that laid that phobia in place. And I am not kidding. I'm not underestimating it either. Essentially, I'll get to that. But so a phobia. I've worked with, say, a woman who had chronic, acute, the worst pain I had ever seen. It was non-existent limb pain. In other words, her limb had been amputated some 19 years before. And if you know anything about that kind of pain, it's pretty incurable. She was on, I think, like 12 meds a day and pretty much non-functional. And so it worked even on that.
That's
what
amazing.
happened was that the pain is so bizarre. The pain of I used to call it her, we would joke a little bit, I would call it her non-leg. But the pain in the non-leg was all related to underlying traumatic events. So what am I talking about? She had a trauma when she was a little girl with a birthday party where her mom, where something that her mom did. Or there was a 15-second snippet event of something that happened with her dad, or when her husband died and left her as a young widow and she had no money, the moment of impact when she found that news out. Those moments, you talked about going into those moments were so big, so to speak, that she was not able to process them. So they went into the trauma area of our brain, or the limbic portion of our brain, the portion of our brain where we're in fight or flight, we're in survival. And in that place, we're not able to process information. We're just surviving. And every time that we tapped with this particular woman on one of these events, her pain shot up to like a 10. It went all over the place, and then it completely resolved. So she had no pain at all. Pretty amazing.
This is amazing. So, and it sounds like a very powerful modality. So, what kind of education or certification is required to become an EFT practitioner?
That's a really good question. Right now, I would say the field has like lots of different splits, and the basic training is something like a weekend type course with some mentorship follow-up. And I personally think that, the technique, because it is so powerful, because it's using these meridian points, and because you're working with people who have had sometimes, you don't know who's got PTSD, who's got significant trauma or not. You really need to know what you're doing, is my belief. You can't just dive in there and say, okay, let's go and do this thing or whatever. I think it does take some years. It takes experience. I trained through workshops with Gary Craig, along with hundreds of other people years ago. And then I trained with his daughter, Tina, I mentored, and it was quite extensive mentoring and training. So there's a number of ways to be trained. But I think for people who are, say, maybe going to see a practitioner or who think they can get help from a practitioner, you talked earlier about personal responsibility. Gwilda, and I think that's critical. Don't go to a person and hand over your seniority and hand over, like, you're going to heal me. No, the tapping is a partnership, and if people are promising you things, I'd probably watch out for that. I would ask people for kind of a track record. If there's references, I'd ask for that,
Now, I experienced some years back Dr. Roger and Joanne Callahan, their thought field therapy in meridian energy tapping. It was back in the 1980s. EFT sounds very similar to that. Are they related at all?
Totally, yeah. Gary Craig, who created EFT or founded it, that technique, he was a student of Roger Callahan's, and the late Roger Callahan, and Roger's that technique, and I'm familiar with it as well. It was a little bit more complex because you had to follow certain points in certain ways, and it would address certain emotions, and I think it didn't have the belief system that we can address physical and emotion. We can address the underlying events that are contributing to emotional and physical issues. And so Gary just went ahead and he simplified it. He said, okay, you tap on these 9 points, the top of the head, the inside of the eye, the outside of the eye, etc., and it's going to work. And so, it sprang out of thought field therapy, which, just so you know, thought field therapy has now been accepted, I think, I don't remember the exact federal organization, but it has to do with addictions and stuff, and mental health and addictions. It's been accepted as a technique that's standard now. So it's being integrated bit by bit into the mainstream thought field therapy, as well as emotional freedom techniques. And there's a number of studies that are coming out about its effectiveness in terms of lowering stress levels.
That's wonderful to hear. How is EFT like NLP or EMDR?
Again, I think this depends a bit on the practitioner as well. But there's a lot of, and I'm not, NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. You're kind of tapping into the subconscious. You're using reframes. So at a certain point with EFT, you begin to use reframe. So right in the beginning, you might be saying, I accept everything about this situation, or I deeply and completely accept myself. A lot of people have a hard time with accepting, like, I'm overweight, I look terrible, I can't look in a mirror, or I've got no money and I'm ashamed, or my physical condition is so awful. Whatever the thing is, they have a hard time accepting it. So you really don't want to go with a reframe there. I guess we're probably running out of time. But yes,
we are, Kathilyn.
Similar to those techniques.
Thank you so much for being with us and sharing your wonderful knowledge. This has been The Science of Magic. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Remember, you can always listen to this and other thought-provoking episodes on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. Until next time, dear ones, may you be blessed with knowledge and comforted with love.
Searching through